want to talk about how I go about getting ultimate saturation, whether I'm packing black or color. I would consider packing, whether it's black or color, to be more of an advanced technique than it is for beginners. The reason why I say that is because there are a bunch of moving components that we have to take into consideration each and every time we decide to pack, whether again it's black or color. Some of those variables are the motions that we make to apply ink. That matters. The time we give our needles to work, how slow or fast our machine is running, how slow or fast our hand is. Our ink flow also matters. Our comfortability matters. The type of ink that we're using matters. The stretch on the skin matters. The needles that we choose to use matter. Even the stroke of our tattoo machine matters. These are all very important variables that we must consider when we are packing color or black. For example, if I have a machine that has like a 2mm stroke, well then I'm really going to be driving my needle into the skin, because 2mm strokes tend to hit a little bit softer than this machine, for example, is a 4mm stroke. So being comfortable with the gear that I choose, knowing why I'm choosing the gear that I'm using, is also going to contribute to a smoother workflow when it comes to saturating black or color. My comfortability matters, my type of ink that I'm using. Let's say if I'm using an ink that's more for lining than it is for packing, well, I'm probably going to be working an area over and over and over just to accomplish the saturation that I'm looking for. Let's say if I don't have adequate ink flow, well, I'm not going to be depositing ink with the entire mag, which is going to leave a blotchy sort of inconsistent appearance. Let's say if my machine is at a high voltage but my hand's moving way too slow, I'm going to be causing all types of trauma to the skin. These are the reasons why I say packing is more of an advanced technique than it is for beginners, because we have to be aware of all of the moving components that we have to accommodate for each and every time we decide to touch needle to the skin when packing. Once we become familiar with all of these moving components, once we become familiar with all of these basic fundamentals that are required for packing color or black, we can now begin to focus on the technical application. Once we're acquainted with needle depth, once we're familiar with settings that we're comfortable with, once we choose gear and needles that we are comfortable using, things start to kind of fall into place a little bit more. Let's say if you're just starting out and you are struggling to accomplish ultimate saturation when applying packing, there is a way to go about getting used to how saturation works, so to speak, and let me show you that here. Let's start right here. What I'm going to be doing is I'm going to be using this needle right here to demonstrate this point. Now, if we are just starting and we're unfamiliar with how ink gets deposited into the skin when packing, let's do this. You can see I have ink in my cartridge here. What I'm going to do is I'm simply just going to pick a random spot. I'm going to hover over that area and I'm going to pay attention to how my needles are depositing within the skin. And I'm just going to put the very tips of the needle. So I'm going to kind of just leave it there. I see that it takes a little bit for the needle to actually begin catching. As you can see, now the needle's fully caught. So it has to stay there for a few moments before the needle actually begins to do its job. So if we look again, you can see if I leave it there, how they get a little bit more saturated as the needle makes more rounds into the skin. So we can see if we're leaving it, the needle has time to do its job to saturate these areas in a manner that I am looking for. The last thing that I want is patchy, inconsistent results, especially when packing black or color. You can see though, I'm getting an idea as to how the needle is opening the skin and depositing ink. And I'm going to do this a few more times, just a very tip. I'm going to leave it there to see how long it takes for the needles to saturate. So you can kind of see that they do need some time to do their job. It's not a touch and go basis where we go like that and the needles are done. You can see where if I kind of tap it, we don't have saturation like we do here in these other areas. I'll repeat that again over here. So even leaving my needle here, floating just the very tip of the needle, you can see that I'm not necessarily causing unwanted trauma, but I am getting a very good idea as to how the needle is going about depositing ink. This right here, I feel, is the part a lot of us miss, especially when we go straight into packing. We often think that once the needle starts touching the skin, the damage is already happening, when that's not necessarily the way that it works. It does, in fact, take a little bit of time for needles like this, such as mags, to do their job. I'm going to go ahead and repeat this a couple of more times, and then we're going to get into the next step here of this technical approach. Keep in mind, I'm just literally leaving it floating. I'm not moving it. We don't ever want to do this on human skin, But we're doing this so that way we can see the behavior of the needle and to see how it goes about depositing the ink. I'm gonna wipe away. I want to see how saturated these got right here. Very nice. I'm gonna do this a couple more times this way just so that we can get an idea. I'm sure some of us already got it, but for those who are a bit slower at learning like me, and we need to see it a few more times, I'm gonna go ahead and do it for those people. Okay, so I want you to do this about maybe 10 to 20 times. I want you to pay attention to the tip of your needle each and every time you do it, and I want you to see how your needles are going about depositing the ink. If they are taking a long time, then you probably have a softer stroke of a machine. If they're not depositing the way mine are here, it's because I'm using a 4mm stroke. You may have a softer hit, which is going to take a little bit more time for the needles to do their job. And going back to knowing those fundamentals, if we have a softer stroke of a machine, we have to give the machine enough time to allow the needle to make more rounds to let it do its thing. With this info right here, I am now in a position to better align my technique to accomplish better saturation. I'm going to use this info that I learned here to help me better my saturation and my packing. The idea is to accomplish ultimate saturation without traumatizing the skin. There's just no way that we're going to do that if we're not familiar with those fundamentals that I mentioned at the beginning of this video. So now that I'm a bit more familiar with how my machine and needles are depositing ink, I'm going to go ahead and go over my first layer of packing here, and I'm pretty much going to approach it the same way. I'm going to come this way. I'm going to let my needle go into the skin, and then when that happens, I'm going to make a series of circular motions like this. And I don't want to make these circular motions too big, because if I do, I'm going to be getting blotchy results. You're going to see that each circular motion is depositing ink, and I'm matching my hand speed to my voltage here. My voltage is 4 volts, by the way. I'm running at a lower voltage, so that way it gives me more time to work on the skin, causing less trauma as well. And you're going to see that right here off the bat I am accomplishing, in fact, ultimate saturation. This right here I wouldn't go back over. I would just simply continue to keep working these areas over here, and you're going to see that I'm making small circular motions to provide me with that optimal saturation. My circular motions are in fact neighboring one another well, so therefore when I'm done there shouldn't be any sort of blotchy inconsistent results, because each circular motion was covering the one previously applied. If I wipe away, you can see that this is in fact completely saturated. These rule of thumbs would be for any size mag. It doesn't matter if it's a smaller mag that I'm using or a larger mag that I'm using here. It really doesn't matter. The same rule of thumb is exactly what I would use to apply packing with any needle. So again, here we go. I have adequate ink flow. All of my basic fundamentals are aligned. You can see that I'm making small circular motions that are neighboring one another well, and I'm doing this to avoid blotchy inconsistent results. Then I would do this until I'm done with the area that I'm saturating. So I start from my point A, make my way over to my point B. Once I'm done, I would continue. Doesn't matter if I'm going left or right, it's going to be the same thing. So here we are. My needles are doing their job there. And you can see it's the same thing. Small circular motions using just the very tips of the needles to accomplish ultimate saturation. You can kind of see too that my needle is going into the existing area. Let me dab away, put some ointment so we can see the true results. And still, my technique is proving tried and true. I'm still accomplishing ultimate saturation. It's important to note that I'm not driving the needle into the skin either. If I was, this is what it would look and sound like. See, so that's what it would look and sound like if I am driving the needle directly into the skin. If I go back here, you can see that I actually blew it out. At this point, if I'm packing like that into people's skin, then I'm basically depositing ink into their bloodstream, so to speak. This is where we want it. We want to work off the very tips of their needles We want to understand how the needles deposit ink into the skin. We want to be comfortable with the gear that we are using, so that way we can use that information to our advantage and apply the cleanest results that we can possibly apply. So you can see still small circular motions. Same thing, I'm going to go into halfway into the existing area and then into the new area, and I'm just going to create circular motions until I reach my point B, starting from the point A. I'm going to get a generous amount of ointment, apply it just to make sure that I'm not fibbing here with you all. There we go. I'm still accomplishing ultimate saturation while not causing trauma to the skin and not blowing it out. Although we can see the packing coming through the back of the fake skin, you can see that this right here is far more deeper than this right here. This right here seems a lot more acceptable than this right here. Even the technical application when applying this area just seemed brutal versus applying this area. It's important to remember that the ink that we are using matters. The ink flow that we have within our cartridge matters. It matters how we let our needles work. It matters how slow we are moving our hand. It matters how slow or fast our machine is running. Our comfortability matters. Stretching of the skin also matters, especially if we're working on human skin. This is going to be a fake skin demonstration, so I'm not necessarily focused on that. The needles that we choose also matters, as well as the stroke of the machine. I prefer to use a 3.5mm stroke or up to pack. If I had to pick, I would say the sweet spot for me is a 4mm stroke when it comes to packing and accomplishing ultimate saturation. You can kind of use that information as you'd like and find the middle ground for yourself there. But you're going to see though that no matter how many times I do this, if I just keep this same technique, the saturation is never going to change. I'm always going to accomplish ultimate saturation. There we go. I'm going to go ahead and place that there. And there we go. It is. I can literally do this on this entire fake skin, and I'm going to accomplish the same results all the way throughout. If you're getting blotchy results when it comes to packing, or your results just aren't consistent, I think that you may be applying it like this. So let's say, for example, if I wasn't really focused on my hand speed to my voltage or how fast my machine is running itself, that would look a little something like this. So I'm gonna go, and let alone if I didn't know how the needles worked, I would simply go straight into the skin thinking that I'm causing damage, and then do this. I'm gonna be doing this here. I'm gonna go ahead and do a little bit of this here as well. I mean, obviously we're getting somewhere because it's a lot darker than it was before, but that's still not ultimate saturation in my opinion. And then if I go ahead and apply a generous amount of ointment, we're gonna notice that these aren't anywhere near consistent to what we were getting over here. Although, again, it does have some level of saturation, it's not something that would read cleanly. It's not something that would look nice either, I feel, because if we did this on human skin, especially over a larger area, it would kind of look like emaciated maybe. That's the best way that I could describe it, because we're supposed to be accomplishing ultimate saturation and we're accomplishing this, so it's not reading or coming out as we intended, which is wrong as a tattoo artist. But you can see though that this technique right here, I'm moving way too fast. I don't understand how my needles are working. I'm not giving them enough time to work. I could even have inadequate ink flow just based on all the blotchiness as well that's going on. But nonetheless, there is a bunch of adversities within this technique right here. Going back to understanding what it takes and what it requires to apply saturation is probably of the utmost importance. I'm going to go ahead and repeat that one more time for you all. Even if I saw someone applying this technique, I would know that it's not correct. I would know that that's not how we go about packing black. I would also know, just because it looks a little bit too brutal for what we're trying to go for, and plus the results that I am getting. You can see that it's literally night and day between these two right here. If I go right here, I'm just going to apply correct application right next to it, you're going to see exactly how different these applications actually are. You can actually see the needles as well actively packing the black and fully saturating before I move on to the next part. Apply a generous amount of ointment, wipe away, and that's what we are working with right here. You can see that there's just a bit of streaks right here, so if I ever see that, all I would do is just simply hatch over in the opposite direction. When we are packing, for example, let's say I start right here and I do this area and I'm done packing this area right here. Now, instead of moving all the way on over and starting right here with the same needle width of the mag, I'm going to put this side of the needle over an existing side of what I just applied, and I'm going to kind of just tattoo over that. The reason why I'm going to do that is so that way I don't get any blotchiness in between these areas right here. So you'll see here, pay attention to this side of my needle tip. I'm going to be right here. I'm going into the existing area with just a couple of needles from the side to ensure that I get wall to wall there. Same thing right here. Small circular motions. And I feel like that's also something that's often overlooked. Even if our technique is correct, but we're still starting right here, you're gonna see that we're gonna get inconsistent results. There's a spot that's missing right there, and then now what we're gonna have to do is we're gonna have to go back right here and then do this entire area, which could potentially change this tone from the surrounding areas right here. So in my opinion, it's far better just to have a couple of needles existing into the spot that's already been tattooed and then apply it like that. As you can see. So that is also something else that you're going to want to be mindful of when it comes to packing, is the spacing between each saturation that you're applying. One more time right here, you're going to notice that these sides of the needles are going to go into the existing side. So if I show you, if I kind of just line it, you'll see that this much of the needle is hanging out and then a couple of the needles are in the existing side. Just like that. To kind of prove my point here, I'm going to use this Ink Cloth 45 mag right here. It's going to be a round mag. And I'm going to be packing in the color blue to show you that the same technique would apply even if I'm using color and a giant mag like this. It's going to be the exact same thing. Nothing's really going to change. I'm just simply going to accommodate my machine for the current needle that I am using. Maybe minor or changing my hand speed to my voltage. Things like that. Just practical changes here, practical accommodations. So here we go. So I can still see all of my needles working and depositing the ink. I'm still going to approach it in a small circular manner as you see me doing here. Small circular motions. Working off just the very tip of the needle. Let me go ahead and dab away, and you can see that I'm accomplishing ultimate saturation there. It really doesn't matter which mag I'm using. I'm going to approach saturation the same, whether it's color, black, giant mag, smaller mag. I'm not sure if you're able to see how the needle tips are working, but I'll go ahead and do this in the opposite direction, so if you can't, to give you a better view. But let me go ahead and apply a generous amount of ointment so you can see that I am still not fibbing. I'm still getting clean, consistent, saturated results here. If I needed to go over some areas, all I would simply do is just repeat that. Just go over those areas lightly. Just like that. Dab away and continue. Let me give you another view going in the opposite direction here. So small circular motions until we've completed the area that we need to saturate. And this right here though is how I go about accomplishing ultimate saturation. It's just really being aware of our technical application. It's really being aware of our comfort. It's really being aware of our abilities as tattoo artists and know what we're capable of. We have to know how the needles work in order to be able to apply this sort of technique. And I kind of wanted to shed light on that aspect because when I first started, that's not something that I focused on. I just figured I heard the name packing, now I know what packing is, I can do it. And it's not really like that. We have to really work up into this fundamental right here. I can literally do this all day. I feel like this is a great place to conclude this video, as I do feel like I've gotten my points across. Now, if you have any questions at all, I encourage you to drop a comment down below. I will do my best to assist you in the best possible direction. If you like this video, please don't forget to thumbs up this video and subscribe to my YouTube channel, as I will be bringing more videos like this for you all. I do appreciate you, your time, and your support. Thank you for watching. You have a great day. Are you wanting to develop your tattooing skill sets? Now you can practice and develop anytime, any place with an assortment of tattooing workbooks that I've created. With these assorted tattooing workbooks, we can practice our basic lining all the way to advanced lining. We can practice shading, shading placement, dot work, textures, and more. All we are gonna need is a tattoo workbook of mine. We can use a pencil, pen. We can even use a tattoo machine with a ballpoint cartridge to develop our tattooing abilities further. That means that we don't need tattoo ink, we don't need napkins or petroleum jelly to get to practicing. Simply open one of my tattooing workbooks and get going. It really is that easy. You can get your hands on one of my developmental tattooing assorted workbooks by simply clicking the links in my description or in the pinned comment section below, or navigating on over to Amazon.com, typing in Daniel Yuck, and you'll see all of the assorted tattoo workbooks that I've created come up. If you have an Amazon account, be sure to follow my Amazon author page as well, as I would greatly appreciate your support. Should you have any questions at all, drop them in the comment section down below. I will do my best to assist you in the best possible direction.